Hello, you are listening to Trump Republic Radio. It is May 10th, 2017. You're probably listening to this on a Friday because we're delaying when we release this a little bit. But as always, I'm your host, Enzo Quesada. I'm joined by my co-host, Bobby Hester.
Hello, everyone.
And this week on the Midweek podcast, we have our first Midweek mini podcast guest, Art Rocha.
Hey, everybody. How's it going?
Art, since this is your first time on the show, do you want to tell us a bit about yourself before we get into the subject for today?
Sure, why not? Well, I'm just an average guy living in the world, major city in the USA, and it's fun. So I look up politics a lot, so that's what I spend most of my time doing. So I'm wrapped up in it. It's a good way to meet people, I'm not gonna lie. But going out in public, you really don't get too much intellectual conversations, so I'm glad I met you guys.
It's all good. So the topic for this week is the Suidlanders. Both me and Art went to presentations by Simon Roche and Andre. I don't remember Andre's last name, but me and Art, we both went to the one in New Braunfels, and I went to one also in Austin. I wanted to see them again in New Braunfels so I could donate some more money to the cause. But if you do not know what the Suidlanders is, which is what I'd imagine your response to that word, they are a civil defense group in South Africa for the Boer people. The Boers are descendants of Dutch settlers in South Africa. They speak Afrikaners, which isn't Dutch, but it derives from Dutch. But they've been living in South Africa since something like 1667. You know, it's actually a misconception. Where they settled, there wasn't actually people living there for the most part. There was no, sedentary people living where they settled. But, yeah, the Suidlanders are very important because they are looking at a potential future where there could be a racial civil war targeted against whites in South Africa. And under genocide, or under UN resolution, they're able to have this organization in the prevention of a genocide. They're just preparing. They don't have any sort of weapons or anything. They're just acquiring resources, fuel, water, any sort of thing they need, and they're preparing refugee zones in the case of a racial civil war, because it's looking very likely in the future. The situation in South Africa, if you look on Genocide Watch, they're on step 6, which I believe is one more before an actual genocide. As far as Genocide Watch goes, it's hosted by a liberal who actually predicted the Rwandan genocide the year before it happens. So it is the Suidlanders see it as inevitable that this racial civil war will break out. But Art, since you were at the New Braunfels presentation, what were your kind of initial thoughts listening to the presentation by Simon?
Well, initially, it scared me, man. Like, how can all this be happening when everything's supposed to be so peaceful? You know, when everyone gets together and we're open about things and we talk about our issues, and things just get worse and worse over time, and until it ends up having to become a revolution like this. Like, it's kind of depressing.
Yeah, it's not every single day that you meet people that are having to prepare to defend their family against being killed for their race, but that is the situation that the Suidlanders find themselves. As far as South Africans' demographics go, 8.9% of the country is white and 79.2% of the population is black. And I think the rest would be considered like bush people, that they're not considered black or white. But yeah, so I kind of want to get into as far as how the black politicians in South Africa have been treating whites in South Africa. Because it's pretty blatant how they're calling for violence in many instances as far as black on white violence. Actually, before I want to get into that, I just want to kind of talk about the situation of the Boer farmers. It's actually considered the most dangerous occupation in the world to be a Boer farmer. The average murder rate in the world as a population as a whole is 9 murders per 100,000 people. In South Africa, that's 54 murders per 100,000 people. But if you are a farmer in South Africa, as most of these Boer people are, which is not, a rich occupation to have, it's 138 murders per 100,000 people, which is the highest for any occupation in the world. These are things I didn't really know very well and before I started going to these presentations. I had some understanding of the situation, but I didn't know the exact severity before Simon started telling us. But he also told us, as far as black on white murders have gone in South Africa, since 1994, the end of apartheid, there has been 78,000 murders of whites by blacks. Now, if you put that in perspective, in the Vietnam War, the United States only lost 52,000 people. As far as time-wise, I mean, the time since apartheid ended is a bit longer, but still, those are willing combatants in a war compared to civilians living their lives. But, yeah, I kind of want to get into some of these things that black politicians have said in South Africa. This is a quote by Julius Malema, who has a lot of very choice quotes. He was a president of the Youth League in the ruling ANC party, the African Nation Congress, I believe. So this is a quote by him. When we discouraged to sing "Kill the Boer, kill the farmer," the explanation was the farmer is directed at a particular group of people. And what is worse is that the farmers are not only whites. You're going to kill people who are not part of your struggle if you kill the farmers. You're actually pushing away the potential supporters of your struggle when you say, "Kill the farmer." So his big problem, "Kill the Boer, kill the farmer" is a very, very common revolutionary song that the ANC would sing prior to the end of apartheid. But his big hang-up is not the advocacy of killing whites, but that there are some people that are black that are also farmers, so it would push them away. Actually, there are times when they've had Julius Malema sing the song "Kill the Boers," but also the current president of South Africa has sung this song before. He sung it on January 8th, 2012, at a centenary celebration of the ANC in Bloemfontein in the Free State. So I just kind of want to read the words of this song because it'll give you a good picture of how people see the Boers. "We are going to shoot them with the machine gun. They are going to run. They are going to run. Shoot the Boer. We are going to hit them, and they are going to run. They are going to run, and we're going to shoot them with the machine gun. They are going to run. They are going to run. Shoot the Boer. We are going to hit them, and they're going to run. They're going to run, and the cabinet is going to shoot them with the machine gun. And the cabinet is going to shoot them with the machine gun." That's a song that the president of South Africa, in front of a large audience, is not only willing to sing, but jubilantly sings about a minority in his own country. But the thing is just people don't really care because they're a white minority. It's not a common place to see white minorities in the world, but South Africa is a place where that exists. Art, do you remember some of the stories that they told us about incidents of black on white violence towards farmers from the presentation?
There were a lot of them, but they all ended up the same way.
Yeah. There were, stories, and he showed us pictures of this as well. Yeah. So it's very grotesque. In Africa, it's a belief that if you have sex with a virgin, you can get rid of AIDS. And one of the stories that he showed us was of four black men raping a 4-year-old girl to get rid of their AIDS, and afterwards they set her on fire. He also told us another story of a child that was attacked. I believe they broke into his farm, and they took a hand drill through his head. Simon Roche, the guy that was speaking to us, the head of the Suidlanders, he actually, I believe his son has been attacked before, and he also told of how his father was almost killed by black robbers. And what happened was the robber takes a gun to the back of his father's head, pulls the trigger, click, nothing happens. Pulls the trigger again, click, nothing happens. And the guys yell like, "Come on, we need to go, we need to go." And they just leave him.
That guy was lucky.
That is how personal it is for these guys. He knows plenty of people that this happened to. Andre, the guy who runs security for the Suidlanders, who's there, actually every single day is in contact with people that message him about attacks on white farmers, Boer farmers that happen. While he was giving the presentation, New Braunfels, he got messaged about another person that got killed. That is how common it is for white or racially inspired violence on whites in South Africa.
About how many of those do you think he gets every day?
He says when he wakes up, he has something like hundreds of messages.
It's incredible.
Something else, but something that people don't, particularly know or talk about.
Like South Africa is like one of the most violent countries in the world.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, as we said,
without even being in a war.
As we said, the murder rate in South Africa is 54 per 100,000, whereas the rest of the world on average is 9. So that tells you right there,
And then there's higher rates against whites. There is a good little article on the situation. It's not really an article, it's actually like a study on afriform.co.za. I don't know what ZA, I think that's Zambia. But it actually has charts where it takes all these instances of hate speech by their politicians calling for, the death of whites. And then it shows is the rise in violence after it happened. And sometimes it's something like 123%. The blacks in South Africa hear their leaders calling for it, and they just go do it. I kind of want to read some things off the Suidlanders website. Oh, yes, Bobby?
Before you do, I just want to issue a correction. .za is the official domain for South Africa, actually.
Really?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
So that's official South African.
So, the Suidlanders are a law-abiding group. They do every single thing within their power not to commit any crimes because they're under heavy surveillance always. Because it's illegal to have a white-oriented group in South Africa. You can have as many black-oriented organizations as you want in South Africa, but since definitive ethnic groups are protected under the Geneva Convention, Protocols 1 and 2 of the Protocols Additional, they're actually allowed to do that. And since once apartheid ended, they actually incorporated the Geneva Convention into their constitution, so it is completely constitutional what they're doing. But yeah, they have to prepare at the moment for the reality of this racial civil war. They have a large network. They've been planning this emergency plan since 2006. He said something like they have 2,200 posts as far as their organization goes, which is, as far as like communications, receiving refugees in the case of this happening, all these different functions. And for every single post, every single person has to have a substitute. because they don't imagine once this thing kicks off, most people to make it to the safety zones. They predict 5 and 6 people won't make it. They will be killed when this breaks out. You know, these are people that have lived in South Africa their entire lives. Their fathers lived in South Africa their entire lives. Their grandfather, their great-grandfather. They go back over, 10, 15 generations, all living there. And they live in a country, in a situation where the people in the government are saying that they don't belong to live there. They call them colonists and settlers, even though they're supposed to be equal citizens under South African law. There's actually, I believe it's President Zuma has called for the confiscation of white landowners' land just to give the blacks. And, they have discrimination laws in their laws against whites, even though they are a minority in South Africa. Just all these things, like, really, really blow my mind. It is not something I'd ever imagine existing. But as far as the Boers go, they are a Christian conservative group. They're very Christian. And initially, because Simon and Andre, they came to the United States to try to increase awareness and raise funds. They reached out to how many churches was it, Art?
Around 800.
Around 800. They sent out 800 emails to different church organizations saying, we need help. Our lives are at risk here, and we need to prepare for this, what they believe is an impending genocide. And Bobby, could you guess how many churches responded?
I'm going to guess 20.
3.
Oh my gosh.
Only 3. And that's not even saying like, oh, we'll help you out, we'll send donations to you or whatever. No, that's just 3 total response emails to all the organizations in the United States they reached out to. There is a big kind of cover up on this stuff. I know there are some people on the right that have talked about this. Lauren Southern, Mike Cernovich. When we were at after we were outside the restaurant where they talked, they were saying that they're trying to get Milo and Alex Jones to talk about this issue, but that's hard to get them if there's not any sort of profit motive for them. You have something to say, Art?
I think Gavin was being reached out to.
Gavin McInnes?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if I don't think he's said anything about this.
We gotta support it.
Yeah.
And I don't really want to be negative here, but it kind of makes sense that not many would reply to them, because as of right now, there's very little exposure in the United States. So if you start to bring up just how serious the situation is, people get branded as a conspiracy theorist just for talking about it. When in reality, when that's exactly what's going on, you're not even exaggerating the situation. You're just letting people know the facts. So, I hope that, and stuff like this with their tour that they're kind of doing around the United States, trying to increase awareness, I sincerely hope that it works. But, they need all the help they can get in terms of people like Milo or Gavin McInnes, or, even Alex Jones for that matter. Even though there's kind of some, sometimes positive, sometimes negative effects of him talking about it. But, the point
he's much
still
more
stands.
mainstream now, though. He reaches millions of people through his YouTube and his Facebook. I'm not a big fan of really Alex Jones. I used to listen like 2008. It's so different now that he has this huge setup with the studio and whatnot. But, if Alex Jones is willing to talk about, the impending genocide of these people, he could definitely get funds out. As far as like the South African economy goes, I think it's like 2 or 3 weeks ago they've been downgraded to junk status. Prior to 1994, a South African rand, which is their currency, was actually worth $2 American. Now they're at a point to where it takes 13 rand to equal $1. They're on the verge of complete hyperinflation. Prior to 1994, they, as far as like generating energy in Africa. Just in South Africa, they generated more energy than the entirety of Africa combined. That's also the same true with pavement. They had more paved roads in South Africa than the entire collective of Africa. They had more potable clean water in South Africa prior to 1994 than the whole of South Africa. And everyone, they play up on the news. There's really what most people know of South Africa really is kind of a big lie. They play it up as this great kind of rainbow nation, but really it's been run into the ground. There's massive corruption on such huge scales. Simon Roche was actually someone that worked in the South African government for a very long time. He knows all about this. He's actually the one that organized Nelson Mandela's funeral. Very, very interesting thing. He was actually
Is he the same one who organized that guy who was doing the sign language at the funeral?
I don't know about that.
Probably not. I just wanted to make a joke.
Yeah. But I kind of want to get into some more things that have been said by people in regards to the situation that kind of points towards this direction of the impending genocide of the Boer people in South Africa. Now, this is from Shaka Selulu, the ANC communications team. The ANC is actually what they say it's the ruling government, it's the ruling party, not the party in government, not the governing party. They see it as they're ruling over these people. But this is a quote from him from February 23rd, 2016. There is a race war in South Africa. It's 364 years old. Though we agreed to a ceasefire 22 years ago, we are agreeing to open fire again.
Yeah, I found a quote from the leader of the EFF, which is the third largest political group in South Africa.
I think that's the Economic Freedom Fighters.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different Marxist organizations.
Oh, yeah.
Even most people don't know, like Nelson Mandela to the day he died was a communist. He denied it many times, but you can look this stuff up. Yeah. But read your quote.
Yeah, on November 7th he said, "He is not calling for the slaughter of all whites just yet." But in that culture, that means that it's imminent. It's going to happen.
He told us
on the precipice.
Simon told us when in their culture when they say stuff like that, it is like very kind of permanent. Like this will be a thing that will happen. It's not really if, ands, or buts. It's just something that they're preparing for. You remember the things from that ANC kind of rally that they had where they'd bring around the totem with the white babies?
Yeah.
It was something else. They had this totem where they had two white baby dolls on it, and they'd bring this totem around, and people would bash it. People would bash the babies. That is how anti-white sentiments amongst a lot of people in South Africa are.
It's not a piñata.
No, it represents something. It definitely represents something. So, yeah, I'm trying to look through kind of some different things from their website. They have, here, let me see. I'm sorry, it's not good to have dead air on a podcast, but it's really kind of hard to do this because we watched presentations put on it. I'm not the expert on this, Simon is, and Simon's talked on a lot of different things. You can definitely look up what he's had to say.
Well, while you're looking that up, I'll just kind of go back to when you were talking about when President Zuma sang Shoot the Boer, sang the song. They said that in the month following that, there were 16 farm attacks that were committed, and 6 people were murdered when that happened. And yeah, in the month that followed, they said that attacks on the farms were 11% higher, and farm murders were 36% higher than the average for 2012. So there was an immediate increase in reaction to just him singing that song.
Yeah. Because people just they get inspired by their leaders, openly calling for the murder of whites. There are so many endless stories of the most grotesque murders that you could imagine, of them just going into farms, often not even taking anything, but just slaughtering people, raping the women there, raping them and then slaughtering them. It is the most disgusting thing I've ever heard. But I kind of want to read some of their emergency plan that they have off their website, so you can kind of get a sense of what their civil defense organization is. So the Suidlanders emergency plan has been put together after many years of research and is written according to civil defense law. It is considered as civil defense when a group is organized to administer a refugee flight situation. By becoming part of the Suidlanders emergency plan, you'll become part of a plan that will function legally according to international civil defense law. We have staff countrywide who are personally prepared and receiving training or have received training to be able to manage refugees, logistics, infrastructure, security, and etc. This is done by assigning the refugees to these critical functions as they arrive. Our members are preparing to become part of this emergency plan. I believe that Simon said that his organization, he has something like 100,000 people ready to when this, civil war breaks out and they have to go to these refugee zones. They have 100,000 people ready to take in people, ready to do everything the organization needs.
And the whites are about like 5 million.
I think there's. He said the statistics are so bad for taking South Africa, it's really off. I think it's somewhere between 4 million and 5 million whites.
Okay. Yeah.
But, he said that half of the country is very conservative, but the other half is, very liberal. And the liberals in this country don't even acknowledge the situation that they're in. They don't see any sort of correlation between their politicians calling for the death of whites, all these attacks on farmers. Literally, the most dangerous occupation in the world. Farming shouldn't be as dangerous an occupation as it is out there. But, yeah, I'm going to continue a bit into their plan. Some parts of South Africa can fall into anarchy, while other areas remain relatively stable. Therefore, the emergency plan is written in such a way that we can start with an evacuation procedure in some parts of the country before a national anarchy occurs. A pre-national evacuation phase is designed where action is required in smaller localized areas before the national emergency plan is activated. Pre-national phases concerned, among other things, dangerous protest actions, how to prepare and be ready, house and home preparations, and personal preparation. Phases 1 through 3 of the emergency plan are localized in your area and are coordinated locally. The onus rests on the members of a group to evacuate or not. Phase 4 to 6 are implemented nationally by area headquarters. These area headquarters then function by information from national headquarters and coordinated from there. So, they have this really, really well planned out because they know they need to have this well planned out. But they don't know how this is going to go when it breaks out. They said they predict it within 5 years that this is going to happen. On the Sunday show, we actually read an article about it potentially happening in 5 years. But when we were there in New Braunfels afterwards, towards the end of it, I believe Simon said they were looking at the current situation with how it's going, and he believed that this might kick off this winter. So really, if you want to help people that are on the verge of being genocided in their home nation where every single person, their families always existed, their people and culture have lived in this area for hundreds of years.
Who kind of built the country.
Yeah, there is not much time to really help or donate at all. they have very, very few funds. You know, most people in South Africa are pretty destitute money-wise. But I kind of want to get into some. I'm sorry, I just lost my train of thought for a second. It's the worst thing that happened on a podcast. But Art, you kind of wanted to talk about the prophecy thing that they're talking about.
Yeah.
Which is kind of an interesting thing that the Boers are actually, they take it very seriously, this prophecy stuff. Do you want to talk about some of that?
Sure. Let me get that guy's name right quick. He goes by Sir, Seer, and about 150 years ago, this guy he comes up with these prophecies for he uses a metaphor using that the earth is going to catch on fire like a big bundle of hay.
He's someone that made a bunch of predictions. He made something like 700 different predictions, and 400 of them came true.
Yeah. He's been extremely accurate in his predictions, and currently I don't know exactly what he's predicted because he didn't go into detail, but so far he's been hitting him right on the stone, hitting the nail on the head right when it's coming. You can see that.
I believe it was Jan van Rensburg.
Yeah.
Sir Jan van Rensburg.
Right. That's him, and
he has a lot of prophecies that the Boers are very conscious of, and when things happen, they know about it. He had actually one prophecy, which was actually connected to our own election here in the United States. I believe the United States is referred to as the white oxen, and he predicted that someday like a small black boy would take the reins of the oxen, and he would bring about kind of unruly chaos. Am I right with that?
Yeah, definitely.
And he predicted, though, a man would take the reins after the white oxen, and this man would be someone that has hair like a wig. So, you know, all across the world, it seemed like most people predicted that Hillary would win. But if you went to the Boers, they all knew Donald Trump would win.
Yeah, they were all in. They were making bets and everything.
Yeah. Do you remember the predictions that they had towards their own situation, though? Their kind of impending death?
No, I really don't.
I believe they had some sort of prophecy that kind of foretold what they're currently going through.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember so much, though.
It's hard to remember when you're kind of depressed.
Yeah, it was so depressing having to listen to the entire presentation.
Yeah.
You know, the whole time. It's not something you have to think about in the United States, you know?
Maybe some places. But.
Like I'm a white person. I don't have to think about being murdered for, like, who I am, something I didn't choose in such a harsh degree that these Boer people are experiencing. Something else.
Live with that fear every day.
Yeah. Were there some other things you took away from the presentation, Art, that would be kind of good to bring up? I'm trying to think back to what I remember.
Just how still locked in their faith they are. They're unwavering in that. They're all in with the Lord, and they see Him as leading the way, and they know that with His guidance they're gonna make it. And there were references during the whole presentation of God. It was like you felt like, damn, these people are all in.
Yeah, after the presentation, you remember we're all kind of around Andre, who was speaking just to all of us.
Yeah.
And he says, you know, he predicts this to go down, that he's going to have to fight to protect his own people. But he doesn't fear it at all, because he has the Lord with him. And, you know, I'm Christian. My faith isn't the best in the world, but to not fear a racial civil war against you
Yeah.
because you have the belief in God. Something else. It's not. I wish my faith was that strong.
I mean, they have a lot of reasons to have that much faith. Like the first Boer War, the second Boer War. They've gone through a lot of crap. They
Yeah.
survived in the harshest country in the world and against the British and the natives. So,
Yeah.
I mean, they've had the Lord with them 100% of the way, and they've been always on the side of truth too, which I think has been helping them. They've never like been oppressing anyone. They've never been causing violence or hate or destruction. They've always just been
They've been just
spreading love.
living, amongst themselves, amongst their own, just
Yeah.
kind of wanting to have their own community
Yeah.
and living life the way that they always have. But
They prospered for a while,
yeah,
and then somebody wanted to get their hands on what they were having. So
yeah. So the Boers, as I said before, they're descendants of Dutch. They're not big fans of the Anglo-British people that actually, what most people, consider the whites in South Africa. Now, during the First Boer War, the British sent out their army to go annex the Boers and their land. I don't know if they declared their independent nations of Transvaal and Orange yet, but it was something like they sent in an army of 450,000 British soldiers, professional soldiers. This is like I think it's around 1870 or so. And they send them in, and the Boers, they didn't have a standing army. They just had militias of the farmers that lived there. They only had something like 45,000 of them. And the First Boer War, they smashed the British. They absolutely destroyed them. There was no question. But they made the mistake of discovering diamonds. If you don't know, South Africa is actually like one of the most diamond-rich nations in the world. So the British came back, and the British actually were the innovators of concentration camps. What they wanted to do to break the spirit of these Boer militias is they would go and they'd kidnap, the women and children, and they'd starve them to death in concentration camps. And eventually the British broke the will of the Boers, and they were able to defeat them in battle, and they annexed them. And that's how you get, British rule of the Boers in South Africa. Someone asked about the situation of Rhodesia and how it connects to them, because there was, a lot of whites killed in Rhodesia once that kind of went to garbage. And they said, well, we don't really get along with them so much because they're Anglos. It was pretty interesting. Bobby, have you looked up some things that you'd kind of want to talk about?
Not necessarily anything that you guys have already covered though. I was just looking at a map of South Africa, and it kind of showed like a demographic breakdown of where most of the white people that do live there are concentrated, and most of them are concentrated along like the southeastern coastline, which is, that's also pretty much where most of the population is also concentrated as well. But no, I don't know. I forgot I'm not sure where I was going with that, but it was just what I was doing right now.
Yeah. Now, I kind of... I don't really think that there's so much more to say so much on this situation. We kind of gave it a good overview of the situation that's happening on the ground, and I do believe that this is going to be a thing that happened. At the Austin presentation, I donated $40. I don't have a lot of money, but they needed way more than I do.
Yeah, and I unfortunately wasn't able to make it, but I did donate some money.
Yeah,
as well.
You gave me $40, and I gave it out to them. Art, were you able to donate some money to them, or
I sent them Bitcoin.
Bitcoin?
Yeah, that was my first transaction, so I was happy with it.
That was your first transaction on Bitcoin?
Yeah.
How much Bitcoin did you send them?
Sent them 0.008, which is about It was about $30,
Mm.
but it's gonna go up in value.
Yeah, as Bitcoin has been doing.
Oh,
But
yeah.
that's a different subject. But these people, they've been accused of trying to incite a racial civil war. Um, on the anarchist, radical Antifa leftist page, itsgoingdown.org, they're giving their presentation in Minnesota, and they're calling for them to be attacked just for trying to advocate for the survival of their own people in South Africa. It's disgusting that people just have this narrow-minded view of it to where they can't, do what's in the interest of their own people because they're white. But I kind of want to give a call to action towards helping them. If you go to the website Suidlanders.org, which is spelled Suidlander, I was calling it Suidlanders for the longest time, but that's not correct. It's Suidlanders. You're able to donate to them if you want to choose so. You can donate through PayPal or Bitcoin. I actually have Simon Roche's business card with me as well. If you'd be interested in contacting him, you can email him at hk@suidlanders.co.za. If you want to call him or text him, you can reach him at 386-274-8199. And whoever's listening to this, I don't know how many people are going to be listening to this show, but I strongly recommend that you look at your own finances and consider donating to them. As I said before, they're a stringently law-abiding organization, and itsgoingdown.org, they accuse them of gaining money to buy weapons to, attack blacks. That's not the case at all.
Not what they're about at all.
They're under heavy surveillance. He told us about what it takes to get guns in South Africa. You can only have a shotgun, a handgun, and a rifle. Art, do you kind of remember what they had to go through to get weapons if they wanted just to defend themselves?
Right. So each weapon will take a 6-week long course, and with the test, and then you have to pass 2 examinations, a firing one and a written one, and for each one, and then after that, then you're able to get a gun.
Well, then you have to apply for it, send an application, but you also need to find one person to vouch just to your character as an individual. And then the government knows where all the weapons are in the country. So, no, they're not stockpiling weapons. He said the number one thing that they're stockpiling is diesel.
Diesel.
They just need diesel because diesel allows them to power pumps to pull water from the ground to give to these people when they have to go to the refugee camps. And
Clean water.
Yeah. And he even said, there's a good chance that they'll starve to death in the refugee camps. Mm-hmm. But, a lot of people were saying to them, oh, well, why don't you become refugees to the United States? Why don't you apply for refugee status if this happens? And he said, South Africa's my home.
Yeah.
This is all I know. I don't want to leave this place. I'd rather die than leave it. It was really powerful, really one of the saddest things I've ever had to listen to from someone. It was just such an emotional room. And Simon and Andre have traveled the entire country. I think they're only planning on being here for I think they came in February and they only plan to be here for 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
But now it's May. They're planning to go back on the 16th. But they extended their visit significantly, just trying to continue to get the word out, trying to get donations, and trying to reach a larger audience that could try to help. They need all the support that they can get. Are there any things other that you kind of want to talk about it? Otherwise, I feel we're at the 45-minute mark. I think we can close this up pretty soon.
No, it's just I don't want it to say it's foreshadowing events, but it should be a wake-up call. That's all I gotta say.
Yeah, and I would just say, I have a friend who lives in South Africa, so after hearing about all this, especially recently, I get concerned about that, and I hope for her safety and the safety of everyone involved.
Yeah. I'm not so much one for praying, but I do pray for the safety of Simon and Andre because they were definitely very good guys, and it's scary to believe that they could be killed within the next year or two, just trying to defend their own families. We went to dinner after the Austin one, and I got to speak to Andre for quite a while, and he was asking around for boots. He wanted to get, I think it was like size 8 to 10 boots, anywhere in between for boots, because he says when this goes down, that's going to be his pair of boots. He's going to have to march around and be ready to fight. He's only I think he's in his 60s or something, 50s or 60s. He served in the military for like 25 years. And now it's called upon him, an old man, to have to defend his own people and his family. But I mean, if you look at the history of the Boers, during the Boer Wars, it was mainly old men and children. Kids that were 13, 14, fighting alongside men that are 60, 70 years old. This is ingrained in their history, and they're ready to do what it takes to ensure that they have a future. And it looks like their future is very dark, and there's a good chance that they could be wiped out completely. I hope that the international community wakes up to this. I wish that people could get past the blinders that they put of this wonderful rainbow nation that, Mandela created post-apartheid, and they kind of, conned us through the 2010 World Cup, trying to make it look like this great place, but they're in a bad situation. But I don't think there's anything more I want to say. Anything, Art, Bobby? No? Well, I think with that, we're good to close. I'm pretty depressed right now. I feel like I'm back watching the presentation again. Holy crap. But, I definitely recommend looking up the Suidlanders, doing anything you can to help them out, and just kind of, talk about our podcast in general, trying to get away from the subject a little bit. We're going to have the Sunday show up as usual. We're recording on Mother's Day, which we have to record a little bit later, right, Bobby, to do that show, but we'll still get the show out. I don't know who we're having on this week. Hopefully we do have a guest. It'd be weird if just me and you did the show, although I think we could do it.
Probably.
But with that, I just want to thank you, Art, for coming on the show. It was good to have another person that also saw the presentation kind of give some insight and what they learned from it. And with that, I just want to say thank you for listening, and goodbye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.